If you've ever thought, my work is good, if people just saw it clearly, they would hire me. Now, I want to push back on that a little today because the most talented people in the market aren't usually lacking effort. They're missing one thing, a way to translate what they do into what the buyer actually receives. And when that translation gap closes, everything changes. I'm Robby Fowler, and welcome to issue 270 of The 4 Wins, where each week you get something to try, apply, ponder, and relate to. Let's jump in. Win number 1, something to try. In the last issue, you saw a major pattern break for me, and that was no tool or resource was actually introduced in this first win. That was a little bit of a meta move there because it matters more than you think. Founders, practitioners, managers, and consultants, when I talk to them, they all share pretty harsh language about themselves when I ask them questions about their own marketing. Like when I ask what's going on, the thing I typically see is something that resembles shame. That's the pattern. They're just not doing enough. And here's an unexpected tool that makes a loop like that visible, and it's called Unloop. So here are some quick use cases where you might use this tool. If you're a specialty medical practice, Unloop makes it where new patients can map what brought them into your practice in like 5 minutes, and that would replace a classic 14-page intake packet. If you are a service business, you could use Unloop so that prospects would map their specifics onto your challenge or your problem framework, the typical problem that you see in your clients. They could map that out before a sales call, and that replaces that boring intake form that doesn't give you good information anyway, because nobody likes filling one of those out. If you run a group or a cohort or a mastermind, you could effortlessly track one shared pattern across 30 days and see who's engaged and who's stuck in your program. Or for anybody who's stuck, if you work with anyone who's stuck in any capacity, where they say, I don't know why I keep doing this, you can transform that into self-discovery that they see on a canvas rather than you trying to prescribe that problem to them and they still don't quite get it. So watch me unpack 2 particular loops using this amazing tool called Unloop. We're looking at Unloop where you can begin to map things visually. So great website, by the way. You can watch the little video, but here's just a quick snapshot of what Unloop will do. A visual pattern mapper that helps you catch yourself in the act of being you. So it's structured self-discovery. So there are 2 primary ways you can interface with Unloop. One is just personally. You can create a free personal account. I'll show you one of mine, and then you can build a pattern. So I was just messing with this the other day. I have a little bit of ADHD. I can get sidetracked, I can get too narrowly focused, and then I can procrastinate. So this walks you through just building the procrastination pattern. So you start with a blank slate, and you can see over here the pattern. So if I wanted to add another trigger, right, I can add a trigger, just kind of like a flow chart here, and you can see you add the details, like what is the trigger that starts your pattern. For me, it's I remember something that I've been avoiding. Okay, what happens next? Well, then a thought enters my mind. Hey, I need to tackle this. This is very important thing that I need to do, but usually I don't feel ready. For me, that's often because I don't feel like I have enough information, because I internalize, I'm kind of get up in my headspace. And so when I feel doubt or hesitancy, it's because something here is like, I just don't feel like I quite have all of the information available in the universe before I go do that thing. And then I don't do it. And so that triggers like a feeling. I start to get frustrated with myself. Like, come on, you've known for 2 days that we need to get this done. This is important. So maybe I start thinking about doing that, and then my behavior pattern there is instead of actually doing the thing, I'll do stuff around the thing. So I'll maybe ideate some more and go, well, we could also have this, it could have that, it could have 4 doors instead of just 2 doors, or I'll go build something and systematize out the thing that if I ever actually did it would make this process easier in the future, but I still haven't done it yet. So I'm just working on the process around it, not the actual thing. That's the kind of stuff I'll do. And then at some point I will catch myself, and that triggers back a thought of me going, man, why do I always do this? Do what? Remember something I've been avoiding. Oh, that's because I didn't feel ready, right? And you get caught in this loop. So you can graph this out. A couple of ways this would be useful. One, just personally, kind of like I've done here, to visually see a pattern. Two, you could see if you're working any sort of engagement with a client, kind of regardless of what business you're in. If you do any sort of client work, you could see how you could use this live on a call. So tell me what happens with your sales team. Well, a call comes in and our top sales guy is out of the office. Okay, what's the behavior that happens? So you could just engage with your client, draw this out live on a screen, and instead of you trying to prescribe or this is what your problem is, just tell someone. It's that self-discovery mode. So that's one really interesting use case that I think makes Unloop quite powerful. Now there's another one, and that is this one's aimed more at practitioners, particularly practitioners who are in the therapy space. And so I actually reached out to the founder of Unloop, Dana. She was gracious enough to have to call to me, but understandably, when I reached out for a demo to say, hey, would you set up the practitioner side of this? This is a dashboard. So this is not an individual account. This would be for someone typically who's maybe in a therapist role. And so when I reached out, she understandably is like, why are you reaching out? She goes and looks at my website. She's like, you're into marketing. You're not a therapist. And so there are several templates here that you'll see, but once I explained like, hey, I think there is a use case. I'm not trying to come in the back door, ask for a demo, and then pitch you marketing services. I totally understand that because people do that stuff to me all the time. That's not why I'm reaching out. And once I alleviated those fears, she said, sure, and she hopped on a call. You're going to see, though, that this is understandably leaning for more in the therapy space, but I don't want you to get tricked and think, well, then I couldn't use it because I'm not a therapist and I don't do therapy. But here's another a couple of examples. It's these pattern templates. So browse starter templates. So you can see these are therapy models, right? Cognitive behavioral theory, internal family systems, relational in general. But like if you just click here on ADHD, you'll see here are some common patterns that Dana and her Unloop team have already built. And so I thought, oh, this is interesting. So there's the potential that you're working with a client that already has that pattern or would admit that this is a challenge for them. So here's an example of one of the pre-built templates. I forget something, my thought is, man, I'm just so stupid, and then the emotion of shame floods in, and then execution shutdown, that's a stuck point. I start to forget more things as I'm balled up in the corner. And then I go, why am I like this again? And it goes back. So what I want you to imagine, though, is take one of these pre-built templates. You could have your own pre-built template. Let's say, for example, you are a specialty medical practice and you have a particular approach and an intake process that's like, hey, tell us first about your vision challenges. What other avenues have you tried to solve this? If you've been told no, what did that feel like, etc. And you could pretty quickly say, hey, here are the typical patterns we see when someone comes to us with a challenge. And that would be a very interesting way to do an intake form. It could be a very interesting way if you're in a consulting space or you do a service-based business. This could map out a sales call intake process. Hey, what's your number one goal? What's your challenge? What things have you tried? What behaviors does that lead to? What's the emotion for the team as you don't make progress in that area? So I think it would be a really interesting way to rethink how we do some things like intake forms, how we might even work with a client on a space, how we might help a client or prospect understand what's going on and see it for themselves. And I think it has some really interesting use cases. So I'm going to keep exploring this tool and see how I might use it, but I would encourage you to check out either the personal version where you can, again, anybody can map out visually what's going on, see the pattern, and unloop, pull themselves out of the loop through that self-discovery. Or some of you might look at this and go, yeah, this is really interesting. I could see where I might plug this in to my workflow and provide a very different experience, a much more enhanced experience for the client. Win number 2, something a client recently asked. We're starting a new series today, Why Nobody's Buying What You're Best At. This is part 1, and you've had this experience before. You're on a Zoom call, you're explaining away, you're selling away, you're dropping absolute gold, and somebody says the dreaded words, oh, you're back, you froze for a bit. What got missed in the freeze was an expression of your real, hard-earned expertise. You're very good at what you do. You've earned your stripes. You've built a proven process, and your approach works. You know it works because the patients who choose you or the clients who hire you, they get results. Now, in the previous series, we looked at building the kind of message that travels without you needing to be in the room. In this series, we're wrestling with this head-scratching challenge. So you've built something excellent. Your patients or clients, they would vouch for it, and somehow it still won't sell itself the way you know that it should. And so to put it plainly, you keep explaining how great your work is, and then they just keep walking by. The work is a solid A. You show them the report card, and they're still not interested. Here's the good news. Your work isn't the problem, and neither is your effort. The irony is, the better you are at your craft, the worse you are about caring too much about the craft, especially when it comes to your marketing. Now think about the artist. They can talk endlessly about their craft, right? The colors, the influences, the lighting, the materials, or the muse, but they are often terrible at telling you what you get out of the art when you buy the art. See, the artist has zero training on how to communicate the value his or her art produces for the buyer. Hanging my art in your office will inspire the work and value you produce every day. Or one-of-one paintings like this, of this kind of quality, they regularly double in value every generation. Said no artist ever, right? They just don't talk that way. And the same goes for founders and for specialists. For you, packaging the offer often feels 10 times harder than the actual work that you excel at. So for now, I just want you to know that's very normal. Accept that producing art and selling that art are two very different skills. You're crushing the first part, and the good news is the second part is fixable. Next time, 3 fixes you will reach for first, and why none of those are going to close the gap. Win number 3, something to think about. Nowadays, sharing is just a prompt away. Sharing is not synonymous with having something to say. The former, sharing, that's a prompt away. But the latter, actually having something to say, that's knowing whether the prompt produced anything valuable for the person who actually needs to hear from you. Win number 4, something personal. Now, I am not a poet, I'm not a philosopher, and I'm not a predictor. I am a pretty decent observer, though, and when it comes to AI, here are 2 different trajectories I've observed from 2 different experts that I've followed for a number of years. Now, these experts, these aren't like the kinds whose books are on the bookshelves, but you've never met them or had a conversation with them, nor are these like buddies that you've had since your freshman year in college with nicknames like Skeeter or Grubs. These are experts, but these are experts I know, enjoy, admire, and learn from. They do work that intersects and overlaps with the kind of work that I do. And as AI began to blossom and ChatGPT kind of first began to take hold, one of those experts went from what I would say early on like, oh, we're screwed panic. And then about 18 months ago, that shifted to, hey, we should be an early adopter in the space that we're in, like this passion around being an early adopter. To present day, like, hey, it's AI slop, just poo-pooing over AI slop. And it's interesting, there's one other expert that I know in a similar space, and they started more like, hey, this AI thing looks like an interesting toy. That's the kind of energy they had around it. Then it transitioned to like, this might be a legitimate thing, and I'm starting to feel a little left behind, anxiety around that. And then recently to like plate tectonic shift, shake up predictions about, hey, who knows where we're headed. That second expert sees us on the cliff of a potentially like a revolutionary Wild West for what things could look like for the kind of work that I do and that those of us in this space do. The first expert kind of has it pegged as an overhyped $2 bin of old Western VHS tapes. And so that's just my observation over the past, 24 to 36 months around the AI volatility, around how much is changing and what the future should look like. I'll just admit I have no idea who's right. It's probably neither one of those is dead right, and I certainly don't have a better answer. So the question is, what happens when you can't predict the AI future? Well, if, like me, you feel uncertain, what is wise for us to focus on? And as I've thought about that, at least for now, here's what I'm focused on. I want to be the kind of husband, father, neighbor, and professional who's filled with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control. I can't think of a future where that kind of a person can't add value, regardless of what that future might look like. Keep building a life-giving brand. I help owners of service businesses and specialty practices build the strategic foundation their marketing has been running without, so that every tactic, every hire, every dollar finally pulls in the same direction. If you think that's you and you want to explore working together, there's a link in the show notes of how we could do that. I'd love to have a conversation. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss another issue. They come out every Friday. See you next time.